You'd be surprised how many sort of BA teams don't collaborate and work with each other. The idea behind sort of a community of practice is that we have access to other people's sort of intelligence, expertise, information, a space where business analysts can sort of grow. The one that I helped set up from scratch was a 7-year spell, and at its peak had 34 business analysts in it. We've had business analysts bring their sort of project problems to a wider group and effectively get a fresh pair of eyes on a problem that they're facing.
Welcome to the Inside Business Analysis podcast. I'm your host, Tanner Jacobs, and today I am joined with Faizal Dawood. Faizal, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
No, I'm feeling great, thank you. I'm feeling very, very good. I'm excited to have you on, Faizal, to discuss today our conversation, which is around building a business analysis community as a practice, which you have years and years of experience in doing so in different organizations and different places. How long have you been working in business analysis for?
So I've been a business analyst ever since I sort of graduated from university. So it's
Really?
yeah. So I actually did a course in sort of business analysis, a degree, in fact. So it was good. I've been a BA just over a decade now, which is weird to say out loud. But yeah, I've always throughout my entire career sort of been a business analyst.
Nice, yeah. So, we're looking at, or in that 10-year period or just over the decade, how many BA communities of practice have you set up?
So I've set up one, which has been it's been sort of 7 years in length, but I've been actively engaged in sort of 3 others as well. So over the course of sort of my sort of career today, I've been actively involved in 4. The one that I helped set up from scratch was for a 7-year spell, and at its peak had 34 business analysts in it. So it's quite a lot.
No, honestly, that's really impressive. 7 years is not, that's a long time, if you're being completely honest. And it's a long time to keep something like a community of practice engaged and active. So kudos to you on that one. So can you kind of explain to the listeners then what is a business analysis community of practice, and why are they valuable for BA teams to have?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, in my experience, a business analysis community of practice is effectively it's a group of people, collaborators who do a similar role or the same role. So in my previous community of practice, we've had business analysts, systems analysts, data analysts, but on the whole business analysts. And they're effectively sort of a group of collaborators who sort of engage with each other on a sort of a semi-frequent basis. The idea behind sort of a community of practice is that we have access to other people's sort of intelligence, expertise, information, and it's effectively a space where business analysts can sort of grow together from a personal point of view and a sort of a professional point of view. And in terms of sort of the value that they bring is it's collective problem solving. So I've been in sort of business analysis teams where we either might all work on a singular program together, or from a sort of a project model point of view where we all work on a distinct sort of projects and we sort of come together as a group of people, which is great because it sort of provides a forum to step away from the day-to-day stresses of project life and come together as sort of like-minded individuals. And also there's a pretty big sort of networking element to it as well, because just by having and being part of a community of practice, you get to pick the brains of maybe 10s, 20, 30 odd BAs.
Yeah. No, that's really great. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think what you're talking about there, that collaboration piece and that networking piece, and also just having a community of other people who are doing what you're doing within the organization, to bounce off ideas, and brainstorm different ways of approaching a problem. I think there's certainly a power in that. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, because I mean, I guess to me that sounds almost like surely people would be doing that anyway informally, right? At least you would think they are. So what is it that you feel that kind of the formality of having kind of this communities of practice helps with that? Because I'd imagine, I'm guessing people do it. Maybe they don't. You can let me know. But yeah,
you'd be surprised how many sort of BA teams don't collaborate and work with each other. And that purely sort of the day-to-day stresses of project life. It's easy to sort of meet deadlines and meet milestones, and you completely forget about sort of the community aspect of it. What sort of these communities of practice sort of help provide is sort of dedicated time and space away from your day-to-day project to allow you to sort of think and collaborate with each other. I think in my sort of previous experience, we've had business analysts bring their sort of project problems to a wider group, and effectively get a fresh pair of eyes on a problem that they're facing, and just through sort of natural brainstorming in sort of a group that might not be so familiar with the domain because they're not in the day-to-day trenches of it, can highlight sort of things and ideas that business analyst probably wouldn't have thought of just because they're so close to the day-to-day.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I think the formality of it would help, as you've said, that protected time, the protected space,
Yes.
to have that opportunity to then ask people these questions or even collaborate with people. I think there's something to be said about that, because if it's not protected, so to speak, right, you would just not find the time because you're so focused, as you've said, in the day-to-day. So thinking about setting up communities of practice in the teams, then, if you kind of really, I guess, break it down into kind of the core key steps to take, and where do you begin, right? Yeah. Can you walk us through that step?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's effectively the easiest way to describe this is if you think about setting up a community of practice like a project, right? So if you're starting off a project, you'll have some goals in mind. You'll have a vision. And I think one of the key things is to try and sort of build that community vision collaboratively with your other business analysts and try and get from their points of view what they want to get out of a community of practice. Especially sort of in the early stages of setting up a practice, having that sort of frequent feedback is key because you get a sense of what the community wants to be, and you're almost acting as a sort of a facilitator in the sense that you're taking the thoughts from the people and you're providing a forum to sort of make it happen. And these communities of practice, I mean, my biggest one we mentioned earlier was 34 business analysts. On day one, it wasn't 34; it was three of us on day one. Okay. So over time, there's peaks and troughs with the various projects and programs that you work on. You might go through a bit of a peak, and over the course of a large recruitment drive, you might get 10 or 12 BAs come at you within the space of 6 months. So having that sort of flexibility and having that vision of what you want the community to be really helps when you do get a lot of new faces, when your community does grow, because new people will bring new ideas, and that's great. And then you can sort of relay that back to your vision, and your vision might update as time goes on, and that's totally natural to do. So first and foremost would be to collaboratively build that sort of community vision and sort of provide forums for people to sort of give sort of regular feedback. After that, you kind of want to talk about what problems you have and understanding from a day-to-day project point of view, issues you're trying to face, and what areas within the sort of organization that you sort of want to tackle. And it might just be something as simple as, we don't have BA templates, or, as BAs we create, user stories or process flows, but they might change from project to project, and there might not be big changes, but there might be styling changes or things like that. So you can sort of identify how you want to sort of create your sort of artifacts, your BA toolkit, as it were. And that toolkit is something that you can take with you from project to project. It's kind of, it's agnostic of the project that you're working on. It's something that can be reused sort of over and over again. And then I think sort of a key part of having that community of practice is engaging with other parts of the business. So there might be other communities of practice within the organizations that you work in, such as, product managers, developers, user researchers, and it's engaging with those other communities of practice and practice leads to understand how those two roles can sort of work together. Especially from a BA point of view, it's a collaborative role, it's a facilitative role, and you do engage with loads of different professions. So if you can sort of work together to understand collectively how these two professions work together, it just helps to sort of create clarity amongst the roles, and helps you to sort of deliver more effectively in your sort of day-to-day projects.
Yeah, okay. So the first step, have that clear vision about what this communities of practice is all about. The next step is address or identify which problems you're looking to at least address within the community itself, that you can help to kind of drive the BA standards to be better or improved. And then following on from there is then kind of looking wider than just BAs. What other teams and areas could we collaborate with to improve the way we're doing? So thinking about that vision, can you just kind of give an idea of what that might look like? So, for example, what was give us an example of what a vision for a communities of practice may sound like.
So I think from sort of previous examples and previous communities that I've been part of, it's having that sort of collective. As a business analysis profession, we will provide you with sort of X, Y, and Z, and that may change dependent on the environment that your sort of organization is in. Or it might be that, we will sort of produce these things, or we will problem solve in these ways. Or if you've got these particular types of problems, this is something that a business analyst or a community of business analysts can solve for you. And it's almost providing that rationale almost as to we're here, and these are the sort of the business analysis service that we provide, and these are the problems that we can solve for you.
Makes sense. Yeah, love that. Okay, great. So you touched on earlier that when you started the one that you started, it ended up as 30, 34, 35 BAs, but in the early days was 3.
Yeah.
So can you kind of share some tips on how you then encouraged other BAs to participate and engage with that community of practice, and what other people who are looking to do the same in their organizations, what could they do to then also inspire other BAs in their teams and their organizations to join their communities of practice?
Yeah, definitely. I think when we initially started with the 3 of us, it was, we found ourselves in a sort of a bit of a weird situation where I was the sort of the main BA, and the other 2 sort of then colleagues were sort of they fell into the BA role. They were sort of on the junior side in the earlier stages of their career. They found, they read the BA job spec and thought, this is something interesting, and I'll do it. So yeah, really, it was a small group of people, and then through sort of normal program expansion, we got more business analysts come in, and that was a mixture of sort of permanent members of staff and sort of contractors and consultants. I think for me, to sort of encourage participation and engagement within the sort of the BA community of practice, it's around firstly feedback. So trying to capture feedback through things like retros. I mentioned earlier to almost treat a community of practice like a project, and if you're sort of working on a project, you'll have retros. So try and gain feedback through retros and what's not working, and to help understand how you maximize the things that you're sort of doing well, and putting plans in place to resolve the things that you're perhaps sort of not doing so well. I think also ensuring that you're sort of building that community practice with the people in the community as new business analysts. Join, you want to sort of engage with them, bring them into the community, highlight the benefits. It might be even initially you inform them that there is a community of practice, because they might not know. So say that there is this growing group of people who do similar roles, and chances are we all have similar problems on project, and we can sort of help each other and share sort of knowledge and expertise. And even something as simple as sort of setting up sort of informal forums. So wherever I've been, we've been quite heavily quite heavy users of Slack. So setting up BA specific Slack channels, just so there's an easy forum to share links to like books and blogs and anything really. Just say, I saw this, it seemed interesting, here's a link. Or, I'm planning this workshop where I'm trying to gain these outputs. Has anyone done something like that previously? And we will find quite often someone will have a template to hand to go, yeah, I did that the other day. There's a template that worked really well. And that's really quick feedback, really informal, really light touch. But then you can also do sort of more formal sort of meetups as well. So I know BA practices that sort of meet fortnightly or sort of meet monthly. And it's an opportunity to have a semi-formal sort of meetup and share things that you're doing on projects, and invite potentially guest speakers as well. And you're sort of making that sort of a bit more of a formal sort of meetup, which is great. I know in my sort of previous roles, we have encouraged business analysts to show work in progress pieces of work, because we're all busy working on our projects and we're all doing things, and it's almost trying to make sure that the community of practice isn't a big burden or an overhead. It's not perceived as one. And if you say to someone, can you come to this community of practice meeting and present for 20 minutes, they might automatically think they have to create a shiny set of slides and it's time away from their project. But for me personally, I value seeing work in progress work, and you don't have to prep that. You can just bring it to a group of people to say, I've got this meeting next week, I'm prepping for it, I'm only about 40% through the prep work, but here's what I've got. And then that quick snappy feedback is to me more valuable than getting feedback on a shiny set of complete slides, because you sort of gain actionable feedback.
Oh my, yeah. Do you know what? I think in my mind, that's probably the one of the more powerful reasons to have a community of practice. I think in so many ways, and I've shared this a few times in the past, that the BA role, at least in my experience anyway, it's one of those roles where for most of the times, each BA's kind of has their own work that they are in charge of, and that collaboration is not always quite there between business analysts, because we each have our own things that we're looking at, even though it may be part of the same program of work. And what then gets lost is then what you're talking about, that peer review, approach to kind of say, okay, listen, these are the requirements I've got so far from this workshops or whatever. Can you just look at them and tell me if I'm headed down the right path or if I'm like completely boshing it, that kind of thing. I think that gets lost because we don't have that. And I think in my mind, that's probably a really, really strong reason for BAs to join a community of practice, for that very reason alone, because it only just works better, right, for yourself to professional development, do things a bit better and improve the way you work, right?
Definitely. I think in my experience, I think I've shown work in progress pieces of work, and I'm bringing something that I think's like 85% done, and I think it's fairly locked in, but you get that fresh perspective, and you get people that are senior BAs and junior BAs, because it's a group of friendly individuals, and we're all there to help each other, to get feedback on sort of my piece of work. And all of a sudden their sort of fresh eyes looking at it sort of tweaks my approach on something, even something that's pretty sort of later on in the day. And I think that feedback element is quite key to sort of business analysis as well, in terms of the encouragement of junior BAs, because when you're sort of entering into the BA space, it is one of those more fluid roles, and for people sort of entering into that career path, they might take a little bit of extra sort of learning to understand what the role is, and then naturally people who might be a bit more introverted, a bit more shy, might not speak up as much on project, because they might find themselves working with really talented individuals in their fields, and they might sort of shy away from that. But you bring it back to sort of the community space, where there might be 7 or 8 pure business analysts talking together in a room, and you sort of see the more introverted, shy BAs having an opinion, sort of, if they've got something on their mind, they say it, or if they've got any bright ideas, you tend to find that the quieter people sort of talk more in those protected sort of communities, because it's a safe space.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So true, so true. And so when you did touch on this earlier about the person who starts up this community practice kind of takes on a facilitator type role. What other like roles would you say are kind of needed in this space? So you kind of got the person who's facilitating these meetups in the community. Are there any other key roles to consider placing?
I think any sort of community of practice leader needs to be sort of a good sort of communicator, and that's sort of at sort of varying levels within sort of an organization, because you might tend to find that employers might not initially see the full benefit of having a community of practice. So that sort of practice lead might need to be able to convey to sort of senior leadership about the benefits of having a community of practice as well. Also, one of the potential drawbacks of someone who might not be an experienced practice leader is that they take on every single action from their community of practice. So the ability to be a good delegator is key as well, and being able to showcase their ability to delegate sort of tasks and actions to the other members of that community, to build that community sort of effort, just to make it come across as it's not my community, it's sort of our community. I'm there sort of being a facilitator, and I'm working with senior leadership to sort of tell them the benefits of it, but it's really our community, and if we think we're doing something that isn't quite right, people should say.
Yeah. So, and I actually see those two things as almost challenges to overcome, right? So you got that challenge of senior leaders in the team, in the organization, not really seeing the benefit of this protected time of communities of practice, other roles maybe not seeing the benefit of it, and then you having to overcome that challenge. And you've got the other challenge then of within the community itself, getting people not just attending, but actually engaged and active, right? Doing something for the benefit of the community. Are there any other challenges that are common that, particularly for the person who's setting up a communities of practice, that they would kind of face and need to overcome?
I think one of the other sort of challenges, especially when you have sort of bigger communities of practice, that you may tend to find that there might be sort of 3 or 4 people who are the more vocal people, the ones who are willing to share things that they're working on. So you kind of need to have a keen eye on people who might be a little bit quieter, whether that's through sort of being a bit introverted, being a bit shy, or perhaps being a bit disengaged. It's ensuring that you have a forum where everyone is able to sort of contribute to sort of the discussions at hand. And, we're all busy on our project, so it's trying to find time to sort of allow for that. And I usually tend to find it's the quieter people who sort of have the best feedback, because there's a reason why they're being sort of quiet and they may not be engaged. So it's having the ability to sort of pick their brains, and sort of tell them, if you were building a community of practice yourself, what would you want to get out of it? And perhaps, you can do a bit of a gap analysis between what's in their heads, what you're currently doing, and see if you can sort of bridge some of that gap a little bit.
Yeah, no, totally. And you know what? That's so interesting, because I would say that I'll probably be the person who's naturally the quiet one in the room, should I say. But that doesn't mean I don't have ideas. I think and I think you touched on it, which is that some people are just more proactively vocal, right? They will kind of speak their minds unprovoked, that kind of thing, and kind of go straight into it. But also because I'm just kind of the kind of person that internalizes my thinking process, and then once I've come to a conclusion, I then vocalize what I'm thinking. But then sometimes you're not given the opportunity, because there are people who then think whilst they're talking, if that makes sense. So then they're equally more vocal, and in the team that's hard to balance sometimes, isn't it?
Definitely. And you want to make sure when within that community practice, it's not just the more extroverted, louder people who sort of have the center stage all the time. And you're right, I think I even myself, if I'm sort of in a meeting. I'm paying attention to what's happening in the meeting, but my thoughts and bright ideas might happen after I've sort of understood in my own head the thoughts and comments of other people in the room. So one of the ways I sort of make sure we get feedback from those sort of quieter people is to do sort of surveys and feedback forms that people can do sort of in their own time with a little bit of thinking space, and sort of sharing those anonymously to the group. And then you've created a forum where sort of the louder people in the room have the opportunity to speak, but also you've got this sort of anonymous feedback from those who might not be as engaged, but at the same time will have equally great ideas on how they want the community of practice to run. And it's kind of sort of meshing that together and feeding that back to the group.
Interesting. Yeah. So, okay, no, that's interesting. So, in terms of trying to think of, say, if there is a team of business analysts in an organization, whatever that number is, but there is a team of them, it's more than a handful of people in that team. It sounds like, they would 100% benefit from having communities of practice, and somebody in that team would maybe take up this role to facilitate the communities of practice, and also, I guess, sell the benefits to the organization. But imagine that there isn't anybody in the team who's kind of willing to do that, right? So yeah, it makes sense. But then everyone's looking at each other like, so who's gonna do this thing then? Like, how do you what would you say to that team and to kind of encourage them to take this on?
Yeah, I think for me, if you find yourself in a team that are struggling to have that singular person to sort of present things, I think go as a group. It's easier to do things in groups of two or three, and have the sessions you need to have with senior leadership to sort of convey the benefits of the community. And almost in a way, it's easier if you're sort of doing it in a group. You can sort of say, right, you can talk about this, and this person can talk about this, and I'll talk about this, and we'll go together and we'll sort of convey the benefits of having a community of practice. But it is tricky if you're all sort of if you're all sort of looking at each other. It can be sort of tricky. But I think having that sort of group mindset, say between us business analysts, we know the benefits of it, and instead of having one person present, let a small group of us do it.
Go.
Let's all go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably say the fact that you are looking for somebody to take the lead shows that there is a need for communities of practice. And rather than just kind of getting I guess bogged down into who's going to lead it, just everyone do it and then just worry about that later. But everyone just gets things started so that you can get the ball rolling.
And you might find that if quite a few of you are helping to lead that community of practice, there might be separate work streams which you sort of lead on if you're doing it as part of a group. So you're all sort of leading a community of practice together, but one person might be in charge of the monthly meetups, one person might be in charge of facilitating and organizing the creation of templates, for example. So in a weird way, if there isn't sort of a singular person, it might actually be a benefit to there being a small working group to help facilitate those sort of meetings and those chats and those outputs that a community practice might produce.
No, absolutely. And what about in teams where the business analyst is really by themselves? Maybe they don't work in a large BA team. Maybe they're a business analyst in a department and they're the only BA or whatever that looks like. They feel that, I don't have a BA team, so to speak, in my organization. Can they do anything at all with this?
So there's potentially sort of a couple of options there. There might be, if you're the only sort of business analyst in your sort of direct team or your direct function, there might be business analysts more broadly. So within my sort of experience within sort of central government, we had a business analysis sort of team with us in our department. But if you just scaled up slightly, you had a business analysis team across an entire department as well.
Okay.
So there will be sort of opportunities to engage with BAs that might not be so close to your day to day, but do provide that sort of sense of communities that are sort of higher up. There might also be the opportunity for BAs to be part of sort of other communities as well. So, if you are the only business analyst in your sort of department, could you find an opportunity to be part of the product owner community or like the user research community, just so you have some time to talk to people away from your day-to-day project who might be facing similar problems just through the different lens of a different profession, but chances are, they do or might be facing similar problems in terms of, having clarity on the project or trying to deal with some tricky stakeholders or, so there will be people there who will be having similar issues that you could sort of talk and engage with who might not necessarily be BAs, and that's totally fine. That's great.
Yeah, totally. No, I agree. And then the other group of people I was thinking about were people who they have something, right? Let's call it, they have a form of a communities of practice. They may not call it that, but they've got something where they do regular meetups as BAs in the organization. But it's not, I guess it's not quite productive, let's say, right? With that in mind, what qualities make a good, healthy, productive communities of practice, like the one that you had for that 7-year stretch? What kind of things should it look like? And then hopefully that'll give somebody an idea of what things they need to implement or change in their existing form of communities of practice. It's kind of there, but it's not really kind of doing anything for them. Yeah,
definitely. I think for me, having that sort of shared vision and making sure that's continuously sort of iterated. So you might find stages within the life cycle of your community's practice where you need to have a bit of a reset and you need to have a bit of a refresh. And some people might convey that need for a reset as a sort of a failure, but it's not, because the way your community practices now might be totally different to where it was 6 months ago, either through something different your employer wants to do, or a recent recruitment drive which has increased the numbers of the BAs in there. So having that regular time, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months, maybe even yearly, where you have that regular check on if the vision is still accurate in terms of where you want to go. I think also having a healthy set of sort of backlog items that you want to discuss. So in my community of practice, we meet monthly, but to sort of help us assist with finding those agenda items, we have sort of a backlog of a few months worth of agenda items and talking points and guest speakers that we've lined up months in advance. So if you find yourself having sort of a bit of a drier backlog, then that might indicate that you might need to have a bit of a refresh or review existing ways of working or review sort of existing documentation. And I think, having different speakers. We were mentioned earlier about having the same voices. I think if you continuously get new volunteers or new BAs raising their hands and saying, oh, can I get a 10-minute slot at the next meetup to talk about this? And that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be a full half an hour. I think once you, as a practice lead, if you see those sort of hands being not raised as often as they maybe originally were, that might be another indication that some sort of reset or might sort of need to happen as well. And even something like day-to-day, something like the Slack channel that we mentioned earlier, if that begins to sort of dry up, then that also might be a very quick, easy initial indicator to go, something might not be right. Either people are really busy on project, which can happen, or the community might slowly be becoming a bit disengaged, so that might sort of raise the need for sort of a retro or a refresh of the community and where it's going and what it wants to be 6 months, 12 months down the line.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. No, I think I love the point that you made there around it's not failed. It just needs a new direction, a rethink.
Yeah,
And to be honest, that probably works for a lot of things other than
yeah,
communities of practice, right? Like that approach and that mindset. But I think you're right. I think it's a matter of just acknowledging that it worked for what we needed it to do, prior, but now we're probably in a new space as a team, and needing that refresh. So with the whole idea of kind of the communities of practice, I think my takeaway from it is that this is really about building the community of the BA team within the organization, and that building can encompass a lot of things like
mm,
building the skill set, building the knowledge, building kind of the templates and the frameworks and the ways of working to ensure that there's, I guess, a level of standardized delivery
yeah,
approach and projects so that not everyone's kind of doing completely different things in the projects and things like that. Um, and building your network within
yeah,
the community itself, because you're collaborating and connecting with I guess BAs that you may not even have collaborated with in the past. You probably kind of knew of them but never actually spoke together,
yeah,
um, if it had not been for this community. And because of that, all of those things I've mentioned, it's then important that the community itself is protected,
yeah,
meaning every so often, month or week or whatever makes sense for your organization, that time is not. You can tell stakeholders that I'm not available during
yeah.
this 1 hour slot or 2 hour slot or whatever that looks like, and then you have the backing of the senior stakeholders to kind of protect that time slot, so to speak,
Definitely.
right? So that's kind of the summary of what I'm getting from our conversation there, Faisal. Um, and and so with that said, thinking back to your experience when you set up your community of practice and the other ones that you've been involved in, what have been some of your highlights, from your personal experience in this journey?
I think I think I've been lucky enough to have sort of a few. I think one of the initial ones that sort of stands out is when I sort of created that community of practice from scratch, where it got to 3 BAs to 34. That was quite an early stage in my career. So I think looking back, to be given that sort of responsibility from my employer at the time, to take on sort of such a responsibility with setting up a community practice. A lot of that was learning on the job as I went along day by day. That would be sort of a personal sort of highlight. I think with my current employer, I think I was given a lot of responsibility early on because of my previous responsibilities.
Right.
So being interested so much with my sort of current employer, for them to sort of give me various aspects of the community to help shape and own, that's something I'm extremely proud of as well. And sort of during the course of my career, I've line managed and mentored numerous sort of junior BAs and helped them sort of
Mm.
gain sort of promotions to sort of the next level, but sort of away from that sort of monetary aspect, just how seeing those junior BAs grow as people and sort of almost be completely different people in terms of their confidence levels. That's something that I sort of look back on sort of very fondly.
Interesting. Do you know what I thought about that, Faisal, when you're sharing all that experience, and thank you for sharing that. I think, you know what, this is actually an interesting avenue that some people may be overlooking.
Mm,
I think most of the times when we are thinking about, what else can I do outside of my project world to either enhance my skills
yeah,
and kind of develop myself and all the rest of it, career progression, and maybe even do things that would lead to that senior lead BA type job roles. I think we typically think of a new job,
mm,
or getting certifications.
yeah,
I think if I'm to sum up, those are probably the two things that people consider. But I've never heard anyone say, you know what, I'm going to consider setting up a community of practice to then, obviously,
yeah,
yes, it is for the community, but it sounds like there's this angle of it's also for your benefit as well in terms of your development and your growth and
yeah,
having the opportunity to lead, coach, mentor, and things like that. And I think, if anything, that's actually quite a powerful reason for people to consider doing that. Just if there are people who are thinking about that
yeah.
professional development approach, I think it's a good route to take. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah,
With that
definitely.
statement.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a skill set, and it's a very sort of transferable skill set to be able to sort of guide and mentor someone to help them get to where they want to be, and also that sort of mentoring and leadership can transfer into like your day-to-day project space as well, because you might be working particularly closely with a stakeholder that you sort of need to guide and mentor towards a desired goal. They may not know what the goal is, but you can help sort of put plans in place and sort of create the vision for them to get to where they want on projects. So yeah, I definitely agree with that, because it's a skill set that you can develop within the community, but also has translatable benefits day to day on project as well.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Faisal, once again, thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast
No
and
problem.
sharing your expertise, knowledge, and setting up a BA community as a practice. I think this conversation has been eye-opening around, the practical steps, but also the value, right? The value behind having a community as a practice for the team, for the organization, and even for the individuals who are involved in that. And I think that's really powerful. So if there's anyone listening to this and they'd love to connect with you and kind of, maybe pick your brain about this topic or anything else, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn if you just search for my name. I'll be on LinkedIn. So yeah, feel free to message me, and yeah, thank you for having me on.
No problem, Faisal. I will put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes for people to certainly check you out. I've certainly enjoyed our conversation. I've got one last question for you, Faisal, in closing, and just bear in mind what we've just spoken about here. Um, excuse me. Um, where do you see the future of the BA community going? And I'm thinking about this outside of organizations, just kind of the BA space in general as a community. Where do you think kind of see that we're going maybe in this year or the next couple of years based on kind of the observations that you've been making?
Yeah, I think within sort of the BA space, there's obviously sort of a big drive in terms of like artificial intelligence and understanding where how that can work day to day on sort of our projects and with our sort of employers. So that's probably somewhere where sort of I see it going. Also, from a BA practice point of view, will always be there, sort of being able to give that business value and that business drive for organizations to help with their sort of decision making. So I think harnessing the power of the community can help organizations understand where they want to go in the sort of the distant future, not just the sort of the day to day, and having that sort of forum of like-minded individuals can be something really critical for sort of businesses to tap into.
Yeah, great insights, Faisal. Thank you so much for sharing that. And once again, thank you for coming onto the podcast. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
No worries. Thank you for having me on.